Wonderful. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Fawzia Mirza, and I'm a writer, director, creator, she and they, artist, filmmaker, wife, etc. And I'm so excited to be here because, when you work in the film space, you get asked to do panels and things like that. And sometimes they're super fun and sometimes they may not be as fun. And I have to tell you that this is the most fun I anticipate having on a panel, definitely of 2020, maybe of my lifetime. So that is what everyone should prepare for. Get your celebratory wine.
I didn't realize.
It's a lot to live up to, Fazia.
No pressure.
There's still time. I won't judge you if you step away and come back. If you need like a bagel, an egg salad, a wine, do whatever you need to do. Bets to everyone and the panelists. But I'm so excited that the St. John's International Women's Film Festival, brought us all together. And why don't I just introduce these amazing faces and humans, and then we'll just chat. Like, I'm kind of most interested in all of us talking and sharing equally. I mean, maybe I might steer a little bit, but I don't need. I'm happy to be in the back seat. So let's just go through our beautiful humans. So we have an amazing array of people, and I will tell you, I have met everybody, and I feel like I could tell a story about everybody that's on the panel. But not on this panel. I can't actually tell you publicly. I could tell them to myself. So
wow.
I can't actually show them. And also I want you to know that everybody sent me a bio that I asked for an hour before this panel. So I'm just looking for them now and failing to find them, but I feel like that doesn't matter. I'm going to start with Paul. We have Paul Struthers, who hails from Scotland. Paul moved to England, where he received a BA in Media Arts from the Royal Holloway University of London. Paul has more than 16 years of experience serving in a multitude of industry roles in the UK and on the film festival circuit in Australia. He was the festival director for the Queer Screen Sydney Mardi Gras Film Festival from 2014 to 2017, and now is Frameline's director of exhibition and programming since November 2017. Hi, Paul.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to see everyone. It's fun to be on a panel where I know everyone, which is fab.
Yeah. Next is Bears Rebecca. Bears Rebecca, I want to make sure I say your last name properly. Is it Bears Rebecca Fonté?
You got it.
Okay. Bears Rebecca Fonté is a transgender filmmaker and film programmer. After serving as the director of programming for Austin Film Festival, she founded Other Worlds Film Festival, the premier science fiction festival in North America, and also serves on the board of AGLIF, the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival, Austin's queer festival and oldest queer festival in the Southwest. Hey, Bears.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're so happy for you to be here. And then we have, I would say, my friend of 1 year. TIFF is our anniversary last year. Opal Bennett, although the H feels very important, so I should say Opal H Bennett.
Opal
Jamaican. Opal Hope. Opal Hope's good. Oh, we need all the Opal Hope.
We need the hope. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
try. Well, Opal Hope is Jamaican bred, Long Island native, acquires for POV shorts and curates for Doc NYC and Athena Fest. Also consults with IFP and the March on Washington Film Festival. Opal is known as a short docs guru, but has great love for features and narratives as well. Hi, Opal. And then, of course, and I say of course, because so you may or may not know this, I say this to the panel and mostly to the people watching. There's Andria Wilson Mirza, and so we're married. And so I say, of course, for me.
And Faz,
Andria,
I didn't send you a bio because I was like, there has to be some perk to being married to the moderator.
Yeah.
And so are you just going to deliver one from memory?
I was gonna try. I have a terrible memory, but I do feel like married to the moderator is my next project. So Andria Wilson is the current executive director of Inside Out Film Festival, which opened last night in Toronto, and it has been there 4 years, and is responsible for so many amazing programs there, including launching the only gay film festival finance forum in the world, the North American Queer Film Festival Alliance, and a finance fund for women filmmakers to attend festivals. Lots of other things, which we'll just ask her about. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
I can't believe you're here, Andrea.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm a
I
person.
know.
I'm like, what is this? Like, we opened our festival last night in a drive-in. I know, Paul, you did the same. It was the strangest experience in that, like, everything felt so familiar and yet so opposite of what we do. Like, all the component parts of an opening night of a film festival were there, but everything was like flipped on its head. Like, I was up on stage looking out at the audience, which was cars. It's just like
No applause, just honks.
So I started and I realized that when I'm on stage, usually I'll be like, yes, or like this. And so I just started going.
You should incorporate that in regular life. When you're like, hey, how's it going? You'd be like, yeah.
I mean, that can be taken so
gesture for 2020.
Yeah. What was the film? Was it the Bowie film?
It was the Bowie film, yeah, Stardust. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it played well, for opening. And I think people, obviously, Fawzia, I'm just taking over your panel. We are in Toronto, where TIFF just happened, and they did a ton of drive-in programming. So we benefited from a lot of that infrastructure. But at the same time, we, a lot of our audience, didn't necessarily experience TIFF. So this was their first time at like the film festival drive-in, which was a whole thing. So anyway, thank you for bearing with my like tired, weepy eyes today as I join you all. But yeah,
Andrea, that's definitely what everybody was thinking. You
is everyone struggling with my
everyone was
seen
really
mine?
struggling.
But I was gonna say Paul's festival just finished also.
Well, and that's kind of what, Paul, can you tell us? And honestly, please, this is a panel by friendship and collaboration. So it is so fun to me. I honestly said yes because both Andrea told me to, and of the group of people involved. You know what I mean? Like, how often do you get to, like, we haven't gotten to see each other in person, and this feels like, oh my gosh, it's like we're at a table having a meal and getting to have that time, and that feels so fucking cool.
I remember sitting at tables and having meals. Oh.
Yeah, I feel like I should get a drink, but I got to write after this. So.
Oh.
I don't drink, so I've got some water. Is that okay?
It's all okay. Of course.
Always hydrate.
Well, Paul, maybe you could tell us a little bit. You did just wrap your festival. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, because you've gone through the start to finish. And I know with this, the buzzword of 2020 is pivot. So you definitely had to pivot from as many folks have, from the, in-person festival to the online. And you did a piece in June, which is when Frameline normally happens. And you did another piece, which is not as common for you to do here in the fall. So could you talk a little bit about that and what that was like?
Yeah, we were fortunate in that we did something in June. So we did like a 4-day Pride showcase So we were fortunate that we really learned how a virtual festival worked before we did an 11-day festival. And I couldn't have done it without the whole team, especially Ruby, who's our operations and systems manager. She really took charge with CineSend, the platform, because if you ask anyone, I'm not an admin or technical whiz at all. I'm just maybe a good talker and a good negotiator to get the films and have a laugh. Do you know what I mean? But obviously take things very seriously. But in terms of the virtual festival, it's interesting because the lead up to a virtual festival is just as busy as an in-person. But when the virtual festival starts, especially during the week, it's not as full on, it's not as hands-on, because usually you're having to greet filmmakers and make sure it's a special occasion because it's a world premiere, etc., etc. But there's a bit more downtime. However, one of the real challenges and positives at the same time of the virtual festival is how do you ensure that your festival retains something that's authentic to your festival? So my boss, James, had the good idea in June to go to the Castro Theatre, which is the most well-known queer historical theatre in the world. So we all went there, social distance with masks, and we did our intros from there. And also what Frameline is really known for is the organist, the organ player at the Castro. So we also filmed him as well. So in June, people were just so happy that there was a connection to the actual in-person, and they really, really responded well to those things. And for September, we did the same. We used the organist. We did like the intros of the Castro, but James had another idea. James is all about the ideas, and did a drone shot coming down from the famous Castro sign and going in. And I think it really, really, really resonated. Another thing that we did, that we changed, was when it comes to the short filmmakers, we found out what really, really works and what we really enjoyed in the other programmers. Instead of doing a Q&A after the films or a Q&A for each of the films after, we just got people to send in a 1-minute max video telling us what they would like to tell the audience after they've just seen their film. And to watch a short and see these short videos, it's just charming. One final thing I'll say before I stop talking, because I feel as I'm talking too much, is the Q&As are so much work. To schedule these pre-recorded Q&As before the festival. So we did about 7 live, and there must have been about 23 pre-recorded. It took a lot of work, but the positive is, one, for the programmers and myself, it gave us a chance to connect with the filmmaking teams and the actors, etc. And two, it's going to exist forever. Whereas when we do a Q&A on stage, they come and go, but these Q&As on Facebook, YouTube, CineSend, they're there forever, and they're just so much work, but just so worth it, because it's so much more in depth than you would ever get on stage. Because usually on stage, you're asking 2 to 3 questions, opening up to the audience is like 15 to 20. These are like 30 to 40 minutes. And as a programmer, I would rewatch the films for every like Zoom Q&A or StreamYard Q&A. And you just feel as though you can get super in depth with the filmmakers, and hopefully the audience feels the same way also. Lastly, you have access to talent that you might not have access to at the festival, because someone might not be able to come to San Francisco or wherever, whereas everyone can get on Zoom for an hour, you know?
Yeah, I just did a Q&A with a filmmaker in New Zealand. We showed a reprise of a film for Other Worlds that we had shown 3 years ago, and he hadn't been able to come because it was New Zealand. So, you know, we scheduled this whole Q&A around the fact that it was like the next day in the morning where he was. But we finally got to do this Q&A. And the other thing I'll say with that is, I feel like they end up being more personal for the audience, because you're seeing the people really up close. You're really getting to see the filmmaker, as opposed to them on stage far away, you know. So our feedback that we got from AGLIF, because for AGLIF, we did a mini festival and then the regular festival. And for Other Worlds, we've now done a mini festival working to program our main festival. But all the feedback I've gotten from people who watch those is just that they felt like they really knew the filmmakers and they really felt like they understood where the filmmaker was coming from, and it also brought different programmers out in terms of their ability to ask questions, because this is safer for Zoom rather than being up in front of 100 people, 200 people or whatever. It's much easier to ask somebody questions one-on-one. And I had some people who do Q&As for us every year for Other Worlds, but who just really shined in this format. So I think as much as we're kind of bemoaning the pivot that we've had to make this year, there's been some incredible advantages that I think we're going to have to really think about when we pivot back and make sure we bring some of those with us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about like the things about film festivals that we've all just accepted as like the norm, like the standard, you know, and how some of those things are not super healthy for us. And like when you run festivals and spaces that like support, you know, marginalized groups and folks that, you know, are underrepresented in the mainstream festival space, and then you're trying to create this, you know, super, you know, beautiful inclusive space, but then we're following the same norms as the mainstream festivals, like hustling people from A to B and putting them on stage to do their intro and then taking them for drinks and putting them on stage for a Q&A. And like, is that the best way for people to get out there and represent their film? Like, I totally agree with you, like Bears and Paul. I feel like the quality of conversation when someone has booked that time in their calendar and they can think about it and prep, and like, you know, it feels, I don't know, it feels safer and more accessible as well than kind of putting people through the ringer of the festival hustle, and then, you know, giving them this amazing opportunity to address a huge audience. But yeah, I don't know, it's a lot of things I think about in a queer context specifically as well.
Well, I mean, and I think that there's something, you know, and I personally, as a filmmaker who's been in these spaces, it's easy to get caught up in the other stuff too. And I think this is not just about film space or film festival space. This is just about like the work of being a person, right? Where it's like, it's so much easier to get caught up in like the ego of the work or the ego of the presence of being there or the ego of an audience, versus just remembering like why the fuck you made this in the first place, or like why am I doing this, why do I care, I'm connecting with a person, like, and not everybody does care about that stuff, but I know I do. But also I can get caught up in the like stuff that's flying around, you know, like you're in an ocean and you're like, I'm fine, then you're like, boom, you know, and then you're like, okay, what is happening? And so I think there does feel like something safe in this little square that is really interesting. Opal, can you talk a little bit about, because Doc NYC I mean, we met at TIFF. We met at TIFF. I just like to tell this story because it was basically like such a one of those beautiful film festival moments of like, you know, I just got my pass and got my bag and was looking at my iced teas in the bag and what else is in there. And then, you know, Janet Pearson from South by Southwest is like, Fawzia. And then I'm like, oh, Janet. And then Opal strides in and is like, I gotta get my pass. And we're like, blah, 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 blah. And it was such that quintessential moment that you had. And we talked, I think, for like 30 minutes, just
well, Janet was like, hey, Opal. And I'm like, hi. And she's like, have you met Fawzia? And I'm like, oh, David Nick said I was supposed to meet you. So like, you know, we got to give David his flowers because he had done like the connection beforehand.
He did the groundwork.
And then, you know, the festival gods had it. But yes, it was quite serendipitous and fortuitous because I needed you this year.
Yeah, I needed you there. I think we needed each other. I'm so grateful for that. Well, and you know, I mean, I know Rebecca works in, you know, founded the Other Worlds Film Festival, you know, this sci-fi space, and then you have Andria and Paul in a very queer, you know, space, and you're in the doc space. Like, what you know, what has been
You're
sort
in
of
the doc space.
You're in the doc space. Like, tell us about the doc space. Like, what's that vibe been? Like, I know everyone's talking about like the Q&As and such, but like, what has this experience been like for you?
Yeah, so I have been kind of on, for the first time this year, operating on two sides of the table. I just joined POV at the beginning of the year as their shorts producer, and through that work was able to acquire titles as opposed to just curating. So I was there for like 2 months, and then COVID hit. And so it's been, you know, an interesting moment, still learning the ropes, having to do so remotely. Thankfully, I knew a lot of that team the year before I started working with them. So, you know, we had that rapport, but I'm still very much learning that role, you know, and doing so from the kitchen table. And then Doc NYC, we began, you know, programming work over the summer. And so it's my 5th season with them, and it's been great to have all of that experience under my belt as we pivot in the way of 2020 towards, you know, the virtual, you know, iteration of things. So in the doc space, it's been a lot of, you know, folks trying to progress their projects, folks, of course, trying to capture what's gone on. You know, I saw, as you can imagine, a fair amount of COVID stories, New York stories, right? This being the, you know, kind of ground zero for a while in terms of the rates of infections and the high rates of death. So, you know, some really powerful work around that has come out of the nonfiction space. I'll be really keen to see what people do with more time to marinate creatively, you know, because most of the work that I've seen has been very immediate and no less creative. This is the second time this has happened to me on a Zoom. Oh my God. 1 second, pause.
Did your doorbell ring?
Oh my God, what if it's the pivot? The pivot is actually like a giant creature who's like, hey, it's pivot.
You ready to pivot?
You ready to pivot?
Yeah.
I knew it was gonna happen. I can't believe, I almost want to drop you the URL. I was the host last time. I was doing March of Washington. Right in the beginning. Anyway.
We celebrate. Honestly, I feel like these are the moments that make a panel the most fun. When it's like, oh, my Uber Eats is here, or my neighbor is like, there's a leak, or
it was more like toilet paper from Amazon. Like
This is the world we're in right now. We're all working from home, and you know, it's not the person in the next door cubicle.
Sorry. Exactly. So yeah, so a lot of folks, you know, trying to respond to the moment through their work. You know, us as teams trying to look. You know, we had to work through, you know, my team at POV, all of the George Floyd moments, and we came together as a group to, you know, make sure to be there for each other in terms of, you know, people's emotional responses to the climate of that moment. And, you know, May and June was a tough time, frankly, as, you know, a person of color in this country, a queer person in this country, like, you know, with all of the vitriol and hate and so forth that was rising in response to folks raising their voices in protest. So, you know, it's been professionally and you know, creative wise, a great time in terms of you know, being able to give platform to folks as they're reflecting what they're seeing around them and expressing about it. And personally, it's been you know, a time of bonding and leaning on my fellow colleagues and, you know, and artist friends, as we all, as kind of a human family, go through this incredibly challenging time. You know, so in that regard, I count it all joy to be working in this space. You know, I think we're naturally sort of inclined towards dealing with each other in that, you know, more of a holistic way. Whereas I feel like maybe other industries, you know, it's a little bit more of a leap to respond that way to each other. So so it's been great. I love the doc space. I love the work coming out of it. I'm constantly saying I'm thoroughly impressed with the ways in which artists push the bounds of the genre, you know, and particularly in some of the more hybrid works. You know, I'm going to give a shout out to a film that we had win one of our grand jury prizes at March in Washington, Tea, by Keisha Ray with a Spoon. I don't know if you guys have seen it as yet. It's outstanding. And it's narrative, but it's done in docu style. And so it's definitely been acknowledged as, you know, as like a hybrid approach. And I mean, that kind of work just makes me really excited to be in the space, because you see people really taking creativity by the reins, I think, and it's something that, you know, has direct impact, I feel like, in the world, and that's what we need right now.
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you go.
Well, no, Opal, have you seen No Ordinary Man yet? Chase Joint and Aisling Cheney's hybrid doc. It premiered at TIFF, and we have it at Inside Out. It's
Are you guys geo-locked, or can I watch?
You know we're geo-locked. But I'll send you a link. It's
edit that. Send me one, please.
Chase, I'm sorry. I'm gonna send them a link. I know you approve. It's phenomenal. It's essentially a hybrid doc about Billy Tipton, the trans man jazz musician. And it's such a cool project.
Wow. Please send it.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I heard them, Aisling and Chase, speaking about it, and just like, you know, you're making a doc on a subject on which there's no footage. So, you know, what are the options that you have, especially when this, you know, individual was so, you know, was a subject of the tabloid press, you know, after his death. And so that is really what the common narrative is around his whole life. So it's such a creative, cool approach. And anyway, yeah, that's one of my huge 2020 gems and recommends, is No Ordinary Man.
Oh yeah, please introduce me.
I loved it. I give it trans approval.
Trans approval. Yes.
Do you have a stamp, Bears? Do you have a stamp?
I want a stamp, because there was a film at TIFF I was not going to give that.
There should be a stamp.
There should be a stamp. We're going to commission that.
There should be a stamp.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and honestly, it's like what the kind of things I'm hearing us talk about are just like, sort of like this personalness. I mean, even like getting the doorbell with the toilet paper delivery from, you know, in the middle of the panel, like that. Honestly, the thing that I feel like really connects to who makes me feel like better about the world, or feels like, okay, these people are humans and not robots, is that stuff. And it's not just like folks like us on the panel who already sort of are like, okay, we share certain values already, but it's those people that you're like, oh, I have a meeting with so-and-so executive, or I got to go pitch to this guy. And then like his little kid is like, I pooped my pants. And, you know, you're like, right, they're a human being. This is normalizing, you know, Hollywood and space and, you know, queer, trans, non-binary space. And when you're just like anxious anyway, you're like, I can be in my house with my table and my socks. I don't have to be in your house, right? In your office with I can be around my stuff. And I can sort of like energize and feel safe in that way. And then you are humanized. I mean, I know that's something that empowers me, even though we're in this kind of weird, you know, 2D space. So that's really interesting. And then I love hearing, I can't remember who said it, the idea of like, this is here to stay. Are there things that y'all, and this is for all of y'all, like that you're like, oh, this is not going away. We're going to be doing this. And this is how I'm excited to kind of take it forward.
I think
I really, oh, sorry.
After you.
I just quickly, I really think that we're able to see how robust a virtual set of offerings can be. It's always been, I think, to Andria's point, in this paradigm of focusing on distribution goals. And, I think we really need to take it from the standpoint of expanding access and making access more democratic. I mean, film festivals are kind of by design quite exclusive places, right? And they don't have to be. I think this is what it's showing, right? There, that we can have, broader access of audience and even broader access of artists through these, virtual channels that we've created out of necessity. But I really hope that we continue to cultivate out of recognizing the value that they have.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, just about that virtual. I know people have a love-hate relationship with it, but it gives access to more people who can't necessarily access the cinema, certain folks with disabilities, etc. Also, the price point is less. So in terms of socioeconomic, there's more access. And at Frameline, and I'm sure all your festivals, we've ensured that we have free programming as well, virtually. So that really expands the audience. And I just don't think festivals can really go back, because those audiences who can finally access the free or the virtual paid, like, they want to see it again,
Anyone else? Bears, Andrea?
I'm gonna be the old fuddy-duddy. It does sort of make me sad. Like, there's something about being live at a festival. It's like, even though I was the one who said the Q&As are so much more personal, like, for the audience, it's like, but I don't know how to do that once we get back to the theater where we're watching it together. Then do we cut to a pre-recorded Zoom interview that we did, which then it becomes really unpersonal because I'm showing a video, even though I was just standing there a second ago. So I'm really conflicted as to how these two worlds are going to combine after this year. But I will say that when we're talking about being in your space, I see filmmakers a lot more comfortable on Q&As. And I know for me, as someone who's trans, like, I really think about my look all the time. And so it's much more comfortable for me to, like, spend 2 hours to get ready for something like this, because I know how I look on this little picture box, right? Than being in someone else's space and worrying about tripping over my platform heels as I go up the stairs to my my intro, which I did at Inside Out. And it was terrifying for me because it was the first time I was, like, showing my film in public, but it was such a big deal to me. And so, like, I think that there is a safety for people in these spaces. And how do we, I think we were thinking about how do we bring the community into these spaces. And I think now when we come out, we're gonna have to think of how do we bring the safety back into the community so that it kind of, we can get the best of both worlds. I just don't know how to do it. I mean, I hope that we'll figure it out in the next year because we have some time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's where the work has to be put back on the film festivals to, like, collaborate, to have these conversations, to work together, to come up with strategies, because, we of course have, like, designated programs and, like, really clear strategy around how to, build business and financing opportunities and, all of that. But we also, a lot of the strategy has been, like, networking. It's like, here's a room, there's the bar, here's all the filmmakers, put on a name tag and do your thing. So, how do we really take, what the goal is, what the values are of those festivals, like what we really want to accomplish, and create mechanisms for that to happen in a safe way, both online and potentially in person. And how do we look at,
you know, the expansiveness of what's possible. Like, I think it's, you know, of course we all think about going back to the cinema, but I think it's like going back to the cinema and this, like, it's going to happen in complement. And what I really hoped for this year would be possible was the idea of like a limited, safe in-person screening and an at-home simulcast. And that's been like impossible to do from a distribution standpoint, right? We can't get that to work. We can't afford to do both the venue that we can only put 50 people in and the online platform. Like, these things are still cost prohibitive, especially for smaller festivals, especially for LGBT festivals. So I think there's still like a lot of work, unsurprisingly, like legit, this just happened 7 months ago. It's not like poof, we got it all figured out.
Right.
But it's going to take like a lot more collaborative strategy and like sharing of information, I think, between festivals and like between, you know, just folks like us trying it out and then being like, oh, this worked. Maybe we can add this on to this and so on.
And also, I think that's a positive you just highlighted. I feel this year, festival programmers have been 10 times more collaborative than usual and less competitive, because we're all like choosing from the same small pile, you know? And I feel as though it's a good thing moving forward, because in the past, I would anyway, hide a few films back that I wanted to like sneak up that no one knew about. But now we're just all being a bit more open. And I think it needs to go further than just the programming, as you said, Andrea. It has to go to the operations, the mechanics, like how do we do better next year when we're in both spaces, more than likely, you know?
Okay, Paul. I mean, the truth comes out, you know what I mean? Like, that's what we should always remember, that the truth will always come out about, you know, who we are, what we're doing, the secrets we're keeping. So that, I think that's a great lesson for everyone on the panel and watching, you know, just remember. I mean, I do think that a great sentence that Andrea and I have been talking a lot about this year is collaboration, not competition. And, you know, and I know there was some geo-blocking talk happening, you know, and you know, it's like, well, as much and I know some people, and you know, what is geo-block? I mean, it's such a funny word. I mean, geo-blocking for film festivals is essentially like it can screen in the city of Toronto or New York or Austin, or like it can only screen in this one place, and that's it. It's blocked based on geography. And you know, so even though it's all online, there, like I have my film screening in festivals that I'm doing a Q&A for, but I can't watch. Yeah, like my pass, like after, you know, I'm gonna be doing a panel for another festival, and it's like I can't watch any of the films even though I have a pass because it's in Los Angeles. So it's like, cool. And then also I'm like, hey, do you want this pass? Like, cause I'm like, I don't want to waste it. And, you know, I guess where I'm going with that is, you know, that I think is interesting because it's like, well, even if there's that idea of competition, it's like, people can't watch the same movies at the same time if there's this I mean, do y'all have strong opinions on this whole geo-blocking thing? Because also that's become another buzzword of 2020 in the festival space. Bears, I see you.
Extremely strong opinions about this.
Go on, girl.
I feel like when this whole pandemic thing started, people were very nice to each other, and we were all trying to help each other, and basically people stayed in their lanes. They were like, okay, like, well, I'm a Texas festival, I'm going to geo-block to Texas, and that's fair. And then the filmmakers have a chance to give their premiere to someone else. And then Outfest came and busted down the doors and said, hey, we're just going to give our whole festival to everybody, and it doesn't matter where you live. And the problem with that, there's several problems with that. Like, first of all, it encourages other festivals to do that, which is a bigger deal. At least Outfest has a national name and they can do some national marketing, although they were not really doing national marketing. I mean, they were sending emails out to people who were on their list, but we would get those anyway, right? It's not like they put a billboard up in Austin. But there's now 3 or 4 genre festivals who are geo-blocking to the United States, like Salem Horror Festival. It's like a tiny little film festival. And so they're playing a film that now doesn't have a Texas premiere available. So when I play it in Austin, like some of my audience maybe has already seen it. And then I'm going to have a distributor ask me for a screening fee, and they're going to say it's a Texas premiere. I'm going to be like, it's not a Texas premiere because someone already played it, capable of here. And honestly, a small festival is not marketing to my people. So if you're worried about giving filmmakers passes, like you were saying, Fazia, we want the filmmakers to be able to see, then don't geo-block to the, only geo-block to the United States, but don't market it that way. Just say it's this area, because you're not really getting penetration of those markets anyway. The only thing you're doing is ruining filmmakers' chances to get their films seen in other places. And we shouldn't care about premiere status as much as we do, but the honesty is I have press who want to see films, and if they've already seen the film because it played at some other festival, then that's one less film that I can get coverage on.
Well, in Texas, there's Texas, and Texas has got some rule. Like, I feel like, I'm sure, I imagine, this is me presuming, so please, tell me if this doesn't sound right. I think Texas, maybe because of South by Southwest, the Texas festivals are like real intense about like, no, there is no exception. If you have screened in Texas, get the fuck out. There's South by, there's Austin, and it's, sorry, is that not? But you know what I mean? And I feel like some of those things are gonna have to change too, because it's a pandemic. Like, the number one thing is not necessarily a premiere. And I feel like, I hope that's part of this, we have huge things we're thinking about. I mean, the world is kind of like lava right now. And then someone's like, well, you were at Salem, so you can't be at other worlds. And it's like, really? Did you see the presidential debate? Like, I don't know. Does anybody else have any strong views on the geos?
I mean, I do kind of have strong views on this, but I think in terms of the LGBTQ space, like, I think that, many queer festivals are more community-based than they are necessarily industry-based. So they tend to operate in a way that doesn't necessarily follow those norms that I was talking about earlier. And, they directly serve the communities that they're in. I started one of those festivals in a small community myself. So I feel quite strongly about the role that they play. And I think that, were I still running that festival in, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, it would kind of bum me out if Inside Out, the festival I currently run, had the same, films that I would otherwise be showing to my community on a national scale with the marketing budget that Inside Out has. Because as a smaller community-based festival, you have a small, hardworking team that really programs based on the community that they know and love and live and work in every day. So it is kind of a disparate situation. And so I do struggle with it, because I think, it's easy for larger festivals with industry infrastructure to kind of work in that particular system, but that we are part of a larger ecosystem, and that ecosystem is a community, and that's where some of the challenges lie. And I also, like, just because my absolute, and anyone who knows me knows that my sticking point is like getting filmmakers paid. I don't want to do anything that limits people's ability to earn a screening fee because I swept in and did that I'm the only person that can pay them because another festival won't pick them up because they, like, what I mean? Like, if they could earn 14 screening fees screening at all these festivals across Canada, I want them to have that ability to do that. So that's a consideration for me too. Paul, you want to speak to this one?
Well, Frameline Geo Block to California, and it was important to me because it's respectful to the other festivals to not take away their audience. And secondly, Bears, your festival, Other Worlds, Andria, yours Inside Out, we all have a specific audience in mind, and those audience, not all of them, but some of them will be reading the press, some of them will be on social media, and if they find out about a certain batch of films playing at another festival, who's to say they won't go there and not come to yours, you know?
Mm. What about you, Opal? Is that something that's coming up a lot?
Oh, this is outside of my domain.
That's fair. No, it's well.
Look,
oh, go ahead.
I have like personal perspective on it, and I'll just say this: I think it's a fraught area. You know, I know filmmakers have felt very nervous about making their films available, particularly early on in this, because there was just no roadmap. We didn't know how long it was going to last. People are trying to preserve premieres, and you know, to your point, Andrea, about being paid, they're trying to preserve the ability to, you know, keep their film attractive to buyers. But you know, pretty quickly we realized through what's happening in this country and the mishandling of the circumstance, we're going to be in this for at least a season and a half. And so it came down to, you know, being realistic about the set of options that you have available, particularly if your film has already been presented to the world, right? You were announced, but the festival didn't happen. So that means there's a expiration date on your film, which is hard to say, but it's the facts, right? You know, a film that's been announced in 2020 is not going to have the same options available to it in 2021, even in a COVID world, because the industry's had to pivot and move on. And so, yeah, you got to play the game that the distributors set up, if that's the space that you're trying to jockey in to, you know, avail yourself of distribution fees, license fees, what have you. So, you know, it makes for difficult calls. It makes for us, you know, maybe having to have narrower accessibility to audiences, you know, narrower windows of availability. I mean, you've got to work with the circumstances that have been set up by industry when you're in that space. So, you know, it's not always the best thing, but it's the realities of what we're dealing with right now. And I think distributors are also, you know, nervous about preserving market and, you know, making sure that they can reap returns on investments made. So it's tough. It's tough all around. It's, you know, there's not going to be a perfect circumstance. And I think that everybody's just trying to do their best.
Well, I want y'all to know, I want you to feel rest assured that as a filmmaker with a short on the festival circuit this year, I try not to read all the emails I get sent by festivals. I only look at what's in bold. I delete as quickly as possible. I try to put it in a folder sometimes if I'm not exhausted. I look to see if there's something for me to do. If there isn't, I'm just like, thank God. Because that's also the overwhelming side of it. You know, it's always exciting. I think I love having a film on the circuit, and this year has felt exhausting on this side in a very different way because of the barrage of like, hey, come here, come do this, and it's like, you're like, I'm grateful and I'm tired and, ooh, you know, it's a very different thing. And so I don't know if that's informative at all, who knows, but I know we don't have a lot of, you know what I'm saying?
Because I wanted to speak to Paul's point about trying to preserve, you know, what makes your experience unique, because that's the problem. Like, we all can only do it pretty much the same way. And so it's like, well, what, you know, what do I have to offer? You know?
Well, I mean,
and the exhaustion.
I know you go, Paul.
Oh no, the exhaustion you talk about on the filmmaker side, on the programming front, like at first, when I was pivoting again, I haven't used the word pivot since like July, so it's nice to use it again. But when we pivoted and decided to do a festival in June, it was an uphill battle to get many films distributors to agree to virtual. Now it's got a lot easier, but at first, and I understand why, like everyone was a bit scared, distributor, sales agent, etc. But to make my point is like, yeah, I think people are exhausted, the filmmakers, the programmers, the EDs, the everyone, because it's exhausting being online all the time, you know? And it was exhausting pulling together a program when it was probably 5 times harder than an in-person, because there's so many different parameters, screen caps, geo blocking, you know, how many days, you know?
Yeah, and you know, Andrea knows this. I'm sure y'all know this maybe about me, but I love brainstorming about like, how can we solve this, or what's a cool thing we could do, or how can we facilitate this next step? And a thing that gets me to tune in is, well, if I can't watch the movies because I'm geo-blocked, is there a panel I can watch, or a talk? If there's one person, I don't care the size of the festival, if there's one person that like feels like, oh shit, that festival got that person to talk about this thing, you know, like, is it they broke down a script? You know, it's something that feels really practical too. Like that feels really useful to me, because sometimes you pay for that stuff, right? As a filmmaker, you are hiring a script consultant, or you're hiring someone to talk you through like writing sometimes, or like, man, like I didn't go to film school, so I'm often like, what's the right way to write this? So I love listening to script notes, this great podcast. So, you know, what, maybe there's some practical like craft panels, or just one person, you know, giving a little bit of a talk and saying, I'm going to break down this movie I made for you, and I'm going to talk you through it. Or a live director commentary, like stuff like that, that feels specific. And maybe in the genre we're in, is it a doc? Is it a sci-fi genre film? Is it a queer film? You know, something like that. I would be like, oh shit, that sounds amazing. And like, even outside of that, I'm like, oh, I need to go learn from that. So there's a different kind of learning, because you're not getting the face-to-face and the party and the hangout and the free food. That feels really exciting. In our time left, I would love to go around, go a square, go a rectangle, go a square. And I want, you know, please share, I'd love to hear from y'all, like something you're excited about in terms of the future, or something you want people to know about the work your festival is doing, or the work that you specifically are doing or excited about. I'll call on someone. The Socratic Method. I did go to law school, so this is fun. And let's start with Andrea.
I felt that. I mean, alphabetically, it's fine. I'm used to it. I honestly, we did our international component of our finance forum back in May. It was like the first thing that we pivoted to do. And we had 10 projects, queer feature projects from all over the world. And our ability to deliver that event, it was our most successful edition yet in 4 years of doing the program. Like the level of folks that we were able to get to come and take pitches was next level. And to everybody's point about, you know, the being at home, being in your space, the meetings were very strong. In the old world, those would have been 20 minutes, like, you know, on the clock, speed dating, intense, all in one big sweaty room kind of meetings. And instead they were like, some of them were 45 minutes. Like some of these, you know, independent queer projects got to pitch to these top folks and have these amazing conversations and build relationships. So that's something that gives me hope. And like to Fazia's point, I do think that's where so much of the innovation needs to lie for filmmakers, is not just how do we pivot our exhibition model, but how are we truly supporting filmmakers like every single day, and giving them tools that they can use to get through this weird time, and like maybe that's pandemic specific in regards to production or development, or maybe that's just like building that skill set, or maybe it's just keeping people mentally well by, you know, connecting them to opportunities and reminding them that they're a part of a community. Thank you.
Bears?
I guess I'll talk about one of the things I'm really excited about, which exists outside of film festivals, because I feel like part of what makes me different is obviously I'm running a genre festival and I'm trans. I'm the only person who is trans running a genre festival. That's for sure. I think I'm the only person running a film festival who's trans that isn't a trans film festival. I don't know if that's true. I'm going to say that that's true, but also as a trans genre filmmaker, specifically in sci-fi and horror, I feel like it's my job to shove myself into spaces where people aren't normally ready to see me. I think horror and sci-fi have long been the purview of white boys, and I'm tired of their point of view, white straight boys. I want to get our queer perspective into those realms, and I can do that from a programming perspective and a filmmaking perspective. And to me, it was really important. Like, you know, I only came out like less than 2 years ago, but I knew when I came out, it was going to be really public because I was going to be going on the film festival circuit and meeting a lot of filmmakers. And so I really had to be okay with that. So I know that that is something that I really want to work towards is pushing queer visibility in these spaces that aren't normally accepting.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Paul.
I'm excited for so much. I'm excited to see my mum and dad, in particular my mum, at some point when I can go to Scotland and visit. I'm excited to see my friends and family around the world, my niece and nephew in Australia. And thirdly, so I should come back to film. I shouldn't just be all like family. I'm excited. I'm excited for when festivals can be back in person, when we can all connect, when we can discuss what we've learned from this crazy year, what's important to us, what's not, and how we can ensure that the future of the world is a bit better. And I'm really excited to see what filmmakers do in response to this year, like Black Lives Matter, Trump, forest fires, climate change, and really excited for the positive impact those stories are going to make on the world. I just have a lot of hope, and I think things are going to change in a beautiful fashion, hopefully, for this planet.
Well, what a great segue, Paul. You've brought us to our final panelist, who is indeed named after Hope. Opal Hope.
Flowers to my mother, Hope Constance, for the naming. And I will mention her in the vein of Hope because she, at the ripe old age of 82, got married, not once, but twice during this period. Zoom married in April, distance married in July. So carrying on the vein of family, I'm looking forward to seeing her finally and her new husband to celebrate their love, which every time I share with people, they're like, what, 82? That gives me hope. And yeah, you know, I think we've all experienced that great art is born of great struggle, and we as a human family are incredibly resilient. And this has been a time personally for me, for, you know, a lot of struggle and dark days, but being in this space, in this creative space amongst creatives and those who express themselves for their life's work, I can't help but be hopeful with what's to come, and you know, really girding up to do my best to be supportive.
I mean, I am definitely feeling a little teary. I mean, you can't see it, but that's so beautiful. Thank you. And honestly, what great way to have an afternoon. I don't know what time people are watching. I don't know when you're watching this, but this has been such a great hour to spend, and kind of meditative in some ways, where you're like, oh, I have to take an hour and do yoga, or I have to take an hour and go on a walk, and I need it, but I don't have time to take it. And so I feel really grateful, because this is an hour of, I'm a Pisces, so whatever, get out of here with y'all. But this has been a really beautiful hour, I know, for me, and I hope for you to just spend in the way that I know we need it, and we don't often take it for ourselves. So thank you, Opal and Bears and Paul and Andrea, wife. And thank you, St. John's International Women's Festival, for giving us this little room to chill in. And honestly, look, we are happy to do this in person in St. John's, Newfoundland. I know I haven't been there before, and I am really wanting to go. And I hear there's this whole iceberg thing that we should be there for. So yeah, we're happy to do this beautiful event again in person. So thank you all. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for watching and listening and spending time with us. And you know what, let's leave on hope, because honestly, that's all sometimes we got. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.